Welcome to this week's edition of Mob Talk. I'm Dave Stratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia with the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Wow, George. 127 alleged mobsters arrested up and down the East Coast from New York to Massachusetts and back.
It's a big indictment, but not the one we've been expecting.
Okay, George, they're calling this one of the biggest, if not the biggest, takedown of the Mafia in FBI history.
Yeah, 127 defendants, all the 5 New York families, New England and North Jersey. So it's a major undertaking. Eric Holder, the U.S. Attorney, goes up to Brooklyn to be part of the press conference to announce this.
And the media gets let in at Fort Hamilton to see everybody getting arrested in the process.
Yeah, and it runs the gamut of typical mob racketeering operations, everything from murder and extortion to corruption of unions, to bookmaking and narcotics trafficking, the whole package.
And they get the head of the Patriarcha crime family in Rhode Island as well.
Yeah, and he was involved in, which has become an interesting kind of side business operation for the wise guys, shaking down and extorting strip clubs. I mean, he was involved in some of that. There's some of that in the New York case, and there was some of that in the recent sentencing of Sonny Franzese, another longtime gangster in New York.
All right, and my sources tell me that's a big enterprise for the Russian mob in our area.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of money to be made in that business, and it's cash money. And a lot of money that doesn't show up on the books. And if you can get your hooks into that, you grab it. That's what the mob always does.
All right, let's go back to the traditional mob and this arrest. The 5 families in New York give power and backing to the family here in Philadelphia run by mob boss Joe Legambi, who hasn't been indicted and wasn't picked up today. How does that impact the guys down here?
Well, I mean, that's the question that kind of sits out there. New York is the center of the universe in terms of organized crime. Legambi allegedly has connections up there. He's here in part because they want him to be here. He's been under investigation for God knows how long. Why wasn't this part of that? I don't know the answer to that. Are we going to see this shortly? Is this going to be kind of the second punch, a 1-2 punch? Don't know the answer to that either. It could have easily been folded into even a broader case if they had it. The question now sits, are they done here? Do they have it? Or is there something missing?
That's where I was going next. 127 defendants, 5 or 6 separate mob investigations. If this one is as close to fruition as we're told by sources we've talked to in the FBI, why didn't they come with this? And now we have 150 defendants, which spans all the way from Philadelphia to Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 answers to that. We don't know the actual ones. One, the case is not ready, or the case is not good. And that's the only 2 things it can be. It's not ready to go yet, or it's just not good enough to bring. And if it's the latter, then we're going to be sitting out here talking about this for another year with nothing happening.
Or maybe there's a third alternative. It's big, it takes down the whole crew here, and they want to make sure they have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Or, yeah, that's certainly a possibility. The other is they want a 1-2 punch. They want it more dramatic, so you do it up in New York, then you come back next week, the week after with something down here, and it's 1-2, Eric Holder, the U.S. Attorney's Office, going after the mob.
All right, let's talk. Take me inside the mob clubhouse on the corner in South Philly. What are they talking about today, you think?
The first thing they do, I think, is they look at the names. Do we know any of these guys? Do we deal with any of these guys?
Are they any of our guys?
Yeah, right. Do we have any dealings with these guys? Because, as you know, all these cases are going to involve informants, wiretaps, and surveillance. So the first question they ask is, who got indicted, what did they get charged with, and do we know them, and did we deal with them? Those are the things you got to look at.
All right, and do we have support from them too, kind of thing?
Well, yeah,
they are backing up there.
If there are backing and they're not around anymore, then what do we do? That's another thing that sits out there. Sure.
If you take out one of their guys who goes to the table with the commission and kind of stands up for them, now you got to get a new guy to stand up.
Exactly. You got to find somebody else to back you up, or you're out there in limbo. So that's another, I think, a secondary issue, but it's certainly something you're concerned about when you look at 127 guys. You got to know somebody.
All right, we're closing in on the end of January. You and I have been talking about an indictment down here for 2.5 years now. For all we know, they've been investigating since the last jailhouse door closed on Joey Merlino 10, 11 years ago. Right. They've had plenty of time to get this ready. FBI sources tell us it's ready, it's on the burner, it's cooked, deliver it, yet it's not coming out of the U.S. Attorney's Office. What is that all about?
Yeah, well, I think that's the fundamental question, is what's blocking this? Why is it moving forward? And you come back to the thing we talked about. Either it's not good, it's not a good case, or there's some other reason we're not seeing as to why they're not bringing it yet. The case in New York goes back 2 or 3 decades. I mean, it goes all the way back. They're talking about murders that occurred 20 years ago. This case supposedly doesn't go back that far. You would think if you're going to wrap it up, you wrap it up and come with it.
And what a way to make a splash if it's ready to go than to include this in it and talk about what's going on down here.
Well, unless you want to give separate attention to what's going on down here, which may be from a political and from a public relations standpoint what they're thinking. Do it in New York and then do it down here, 1-2, boom, boom. We'll see.
And could it be that they were waiting for this to go down?
Another good point. It may be that they're waiting down here until New York delivers, then they come with theirs. All of this is speculation, but it all fits into the pattern that we've seen. I mean, these guys don't operate in the dark. They're conscious of public relations. They're conscious of the perception. They're conscious of making an impact on the public. Clearly, this was designed today to make an impact on the public. You know, you think organized crime is not a priority anymore. No, terrorism is a priority.
Right where I was going.
Yeah, street gangs. This says we still care about the mafia. We're still interested in what they're doing, and we're still coming at them.
All right, and for all you viewers out there who criticize George and I on a regular basis about why do you keep talking about the mob, this is the fourth big mob indictment in the past 2 years, totaling somewhere between 230 and 250 defendants. If there's any doubt in your mind that there's still a mob, I think this proves it today.
No doubt there's still a mob, and if you start adding up the financial numbers in those cases, you're going to come up with millions, if not billions of dollars.
Your favorite term, millions if not billions.
Right.
All right, George, let's wrap this up. If you think the FBI won't come after you right up to the point where you're going to the grave, 93-year-old Sonny Frances last week sentenced to 8 years in prison.
Yeah, and the feds were looking for 12. And it's a 93-year-old guy convicted of shaking down strip clubs. These wise guys have never stopped.
All right, man. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week.